Here in Birds of Prey, I'm continuing on with the scenario called An Eye for an Eye and trying to work out whether these Sidewinder missiles are going to hit this ambushed Skyhawk. You can see the Skyhawk has ended up here. It's tried to turn as far as it can. It's pulled a 6G turn inside the flight of these missiles, trying to outturn them. Has it succeeded? You can see my scribbled notes down here. These are all the calculations to determine whether the missiles are able to turn and pursue, continue homing in or not. This Sidewinder here is currently going in this direction and has to turn onto a new bearing up here with a range of 9 and an average altitude of 18. It's trying to change 3 cells on the chart here, so it's currently going in that direction and it needs to be going in that direction, which is 1, 2, 3 cells away, and that means it needs at least 15 range to make that turn and still be viable, still be tracking the target, and it's only at range 9. So this Sidewinder here has lost its target. The plane has managed to defeat that by outturning it. And this missile here has to change its facing by 2 cells from the bearing it's on there to the bearing it needs to be on there. And again, it needs range 5. It needs 5 range per cell it needs to change. So it needs range 10 to make that turn, and it's at range 8. So again, it can't turn sharply enough to make that attack, and that missile has also been defeated. And the Skyhawk there has managed to evade the incoming attack from the 2 Indonesian planes. So well done to that pilot. He's pulled off a decent trick there, and now we've got well, who knows what's happening, because there's no way that these guys are really close, as you can see. So the Indonesian planes are going to fly past, and they've now got all all kinds of, not problems, but they're not exactly in an aggressive position anymore. They do still have some decisions as to how to proceed, because obviously they could, if they wanted to, just fly down this way towards the edge of the map and kind of disengage at high speed, having made their attack. Is that the best thing for them to do? Possibly. There's certainly no way they're going to be engaging this Skyhawk, so they have to have a rethink, which may mean extending into the open space, looking for some altitude and seeing how things look in a couple of turns. Here in Birds of Prey, An Eye for an Eye then. This is the position we've got to at the end of the second turn. I've not had that much chance to play recently, so I'm just picking this back up, but it's a lovely game in that you can walk away from it and everything's noted, and it's got relatively few pieces, and so it's very easy to leave mid-turn at any point, because you've got plots of what's happening, and you can just come back and pick it back up again, do whatever you need to do, sighting rolls or sensor rolls or tally rolls or whatever, and just carry on, which is fantastic. So we can see here we've got Eagle 1 and Eagle 2, the 2 F5s, and back there Checkmate 1 and Checkmate 2, the 2 Skyhawks. So obviously we've seen the missile attack on this Skyhawk at the back here. Checkmate 1 has missed, and he's turned inside low, back to altitude 12, 2,500 feet, and these 2 Tigers have blown their attack and are trying to reposition themselves. Eagle 2 is trying to turn, but is struggling due to his speed. He's at 590 knots. And Eagle 1 is trying to pull up into a climb, and he's at 535 knots. These 2 planes have problems, the Indonesian pilots, because firstly they are both greyed out because of the Gs they pulled this turn. One of them pulled 7 Gs, one of them 8.5. They both failed the rolls to resist the effects and greyed out. And they've also both lost track of the enemy planes. They'd never had a spot on checkmate 2 who's way above them, and actually in the sun cell, if they were trying to search for him for both pilots, he would be in the sun right now, and that would be huge negative modifiers, so there's no way of searching for him. They haven't got they didn't have the activity points to do it anyway. They tried to keep tallies or keep tallies on C1, checkmate 1 down here, and failed. So they've lost sight of all the enemies and they're greyed out. Not a good position to be in, because that's going to have very bad effects on their initiative next turn. Their initiatives for this turn are terrible because they both rolled really poorly, and their pilot quality isn't helping, so they've got to plot before these guys and then move before these guys. These guys got shifted way over here on the initiative chart because they're now both unspotted by all enemy planes. So they've lost the initiative. They're going to have lost the initiative again next turn. They've lost sight of the enemy, and they're not in a great position, or at least the situation now is the initiative is definitely with checkmate 2, if not checkmate 1. Checkmate 1 is low, with, you know, flying away from the target. Also greyed out, I think. No, checkmate 1 is not greyed out. Checkmate 2 is greyed out. So his problem is that he also pulled a lot of G's and greyed out. So yeah, but still has obviously a positional advantage with these guys below him, well sighted because he's inverted. So he's got a good sight on them. He can pull down into a relatively shallow dive and see if he can pick them up on sensors, yeah, that's where we're at. It's coming into turn 3, the Indonesians with a lot of struggles, and a very different picture for the two Australian pilots, one escaping and his wingman covering, as he should be. So still lots to consider coming into turn 3. This is the start of the 5th turn here in an eye for an eye in Birds of Prey, and we've got a slightly unusual situation here in that we have the Australian Skyhawk here dropping down out of the sun onto the tail of one of the F5s. Or apparently so, and yet neither of these aircraft can actually see each other. They're not aware of each other at all. So Eagle 2 does not have a tally on checkmate 2, and checkmate 2 does not have a tally on Eagle 2, and so there's no hostilities about to break out there because they're concentrating on other things. Eagle 2 at the front here, the F5 has got a tally on checkmate 1 all the way over there, and checkmate 2, the Skyhawk up here trying to drop down, has got a tally on Eagle 1, who has done a sort of reversed up through a climb and is now inverted, coming back in this direction, and he's looking over his shoulder looking at this. And they're not paying attention to each other. So that's all rather amusing, but it does mean that there's very little actual sort of firing or aggression being shown. Lots of jockeying for position. Checkmate 2 just had, I think, 2 search attempts to try and find this guy and failed them both. He had a search attempt to try and spot checkmate 2 behind him, failed it, and was clearly concentrating on that thing over there. So the only thing that is happening here is that checkmate 1, the lead Skyhawk, who's pretty much circled round the map now, dodged, was about here or maybe further up here when he first evaded the 2 missiles that got fired at him, has pretty much come full circle round here and has actually just managed to fix this Eagle for Eagle 1, the lead F5, for all the good it's going to do him, given that his altitude is 3,200 feet, and his is 14,000 feet or thereabouts. So, you know, he's 11,000 feet below it, and really hasn't got the power to catch up in any way, shape, or form. Speeds at the moment, what have we got? Checkmate 1 is currently 370 knots. Eagle 1's 420. Despite this huge climb, these F5s has got a lot of power behind them. They can crank on the afterburners and really, yeah, they've got very low drag as well. So if they fly in straight lines and crank on the afterburners, they can really shift. Checkmate 2, what's he going at? He's got 540 knots. And Eagle 2's at 520. So this would be a absolute, I mean, if he had sight on him, this would be close to a perfect sort of position. He's not the F5 isn't quite on his nose, because he'd need to be diving slightly for that to be the case, or to be slightly lower. But it's a really solid position. But the fact that he's not managed to make any sighting rolls rather makes a mockery of it. So yeah, we're going into turn 5 now, and to be honest, things might, we'll see how this plays out up over here, but if there's no sighting that's going to happen, then it's all a bit of an irrelevance, and these guys are so far apart that they may just as well break off, really. So I'm not sure quite how much more there is of this to run. We've had the sort of clash in the opening engagement. We've got some jockeying for position. We've got this going on, but like I say, with no sighting, there can't be any firing, and you know, it all becomes a bit sterile. So we'll just see how it goes for a couple more turns probably, and see if anything sparks off. So birds of prey, an eye for an eye, and coming back to this situation here where these two planes can't see each other. So the problem with this is not only can they not see each other, but the initiatives are such that they've both got to plot at the same time. You can see them down here, you can see a red 2 and a blue 2. So they've got to plot independent of the knowledge of what the other one's doing, and they're moving right over here because neither of them are spotted by anything. And so then the question is, well, you know, which way do they go? Because do you assume that just because your plane hasn't spotted that you as a player don't know that's there? Of course you do. So the question with this guy is, does he carry on to the left? And I gave him a roll of 1 to 5 and 6 to 9, or does he just simply move forward one roll straight round this way and pull out in the opposite direction like that? So you can go, you know, either way basically to try and evade this guy, who hasn't got a fix on him and hasn't got really an initiative advantage, given that they've both got to plot at the same time. So to kind of make this fair, I rolled a dice for this guy and this guy with 1 to 5 to the right and 6 to 9 to the left, and or 6 to 10, and you can see he got a 1 and he got a 7. So this guy is going to end up somewhere up over, you know, up over here. I'll have to move the shift everything around if I was going to play it out. But he's going to end up over there, and this guy plotting this way is going to end up somewhere up over here, and you know, we're going to end up in a position where he's essentially lost his tail on him, with that guy now up over there, and this guy assuming that it was going to come around this way and somewhere up over here. And who knows whether they've even seen each other. Even at that point, they're going to have terrible odds to see each other, because their cockpits are pointing the wrong way to actually now spot each other. And meanwhile over here, there's really not, the separation is such that there's not going to happen. There's quite a lot of separation there, plus 55 altitude steps, which is 10,500 feet or something. Yeah. So 10,000 feet at least, which the Skyhawk is going to struggle to make up in terms of engaging this guy, even though he has to plot and move first. So he can end up somewhere up over here, and there's no way really for that guy to take any sort of meaningful aggressive action that I can see. And so really I think I've reached the end of the road, given the way that this has played out. Just the fact that lots of planes have lost sight of each other, lost contact with each other. The opening missile salvo missed, and this sort of dropping down and attacking plane, Skyhawk actually lost sight of the target at a rather unfortunate moment, and has therefore lost his he's missed his window to attack. And we can just break off. Both sides can just break off at this point without, all right, they might feel. I don't see either side. This still feels like a very neutral position. I don't. I think both sides can break off without too much risk, and I think both sides can break off without feeling like they're giving up any sort of strongly advantageous position. So I think I'm going to call it here, and just not. I don't feel the need to plot out, go through the exact plots of another turn to reach the position that I'm illustrating here, and then to say, all right, let's call it a day. You might say that this looks a little bit threatening with this guy up here and that guy over there, but really he's at such altitude, and I don't even think I don't think he's got sight of him. No, he hasn't. And so this spotting with the altitude difference is colossally difficult when you're up much higher than something else. Trying to look down on something, it just adds huge modifiers to the visual range, or huge distances to the visual range as determined in the book, and therefore makes that spotting process really difficult. So although it's advantageous from an energy point of view, there's a really interesting trade-off where it's horrible from a maintaining visual contact point of view, and if you lose visual contact, you are really struggling to get it again, and you really have to be padlocking stuff, because if you lose that sight, you are toast. So there it is. We've reached a nice breaking off point here in an eye for an eye. I'd play this one again to see if it plays out differently a second time round, but for now I'm really in the mood for some 18XX. Whether I'll film it or not, I don't know, but I'd like a game. I've got lots of unplayed 18XXs. I might go back to 1849, I might try 1830, I might try any of several others that I have, the 44-54 box set, 1880, loads of them. So but I think I might just play 49 because it's nice and short and sharp, and I can get it done in a few hours. Whether I'll film it or not is another thing. Nobody watches them anyway, so who cares? Anyway, this was Birds of Prey by Ad Astra Games. I will come back to this, I hope, because it's a really enjoyable system once you get it. It takes a lot of getting, but once you get it, it's a really extremely playable, visually interesting game where these bases and altitude blocks and boxes do so much of the work of allowing you to translate the mechanics into and out of these displays, and then the nomographs and charts become really easy to use. It all looks very daunting. It really isn't. It's actually extremely good, playable, fun dogfighting game. I'm really surprised at how quickly you can actually get to the point of producing quite complex manoeuvres relatively easily. It's a very, very clever piece of game design. It is marred slightly by a rule book that's just too lean to explain some of the complexities, and you will find yourself online posing questions. But once you answer those questions, it's great. It's a great dogfighting game, and an interesting one. And I was right in that, in my view, that the missile launch adds a new layer to it as well. You know, having the choice between guns and missiles, or the opportunity maybe to use one or the other, adds a new level of threat, and a lot more decisions. So I like that as well. This will definitely get more play. Anyway, Birds of Prey by Ad Astra.